Don't you dare take one more step." Her voice shook raw as her good hand balled into a trembling fist. The barn's old planks groaned beneath their feet. "You think you can scare me with that?" A laugh short and cracked from the shadows. "All these years you kept quiet, why start screaming now?" Heavy breathing echoed, hers and his tangled in the heat. "I only want what's owed." Steel glinted between them. "You're not family, you don't belong under this roof." He lunged, she wrenched herself to the right, her shoulder slamming the post, pain flaring. "You're done lying, every rotten secret's coming out." She spat the words, desperate. "That's your mistake," came his reply. Her next breath rattled out sharp. "If you ever cared about him, you'll stop." The world teetered on the edge. But before any of this, the bruises, the barn, the threat, it started one cold Wyoming morning with a letter clamped in her only working fist. The phone was already ringing as Evelyn shut the battered truck door with her elbow, her right arm bundled useless against her chest. Her coat dragged in the dust, every step stiff and uneven from last fall's crash. She answered on its third shrill, steadying the receiver against her ribs. "Evelyn," a voice crackled, the county clerk from Oak Haven, "I'm sorry to bother, but you've got just 48 hours. The bank's pushing for sheriff's sale on the property. If you want to claim it, you best come today." Evelyn sucked in a breath, feeling the ache in her mending ribs. "Property, the old farm, I thought. Judge says your grandfather's will was clear. You're the last listed heir." She pressed her forehead to the glass, watching pale mist lift from the sage outside. 60 acres of dead dirt and a barn so termite-riddled, the neighbors joked you'd fall through just by looking at it. There was nothing left, just debts and mockery. There hadn't been calls by that name, hers, since prison. She'd expected nothing, after 23 years disappeared behind bars and her own family's silence. Now the last joke of blood thrown back at her. Nobody rebuilt after what she'd done, not in this corner of the Rockies. But she saw the manila envelope on the front seat, her grandfather's lawyer's stamp, edges curled with use. Her good hand flipped it open. Inside, a scratchy old key and a folded note. "For the barn. If it survives longer than me, you'll know why. Love, Pop." Her jaw tightened. That farm, 60 acres on a sandstone cliff face, Newton County, outskirts of Jasper, was a punchline. Sheriff's auction ticking down, debts swallowing the last ghost of family. She shoved the key into her coat pocket, dragging herself upright. If you've ever watched vultures circle and wondered what bones they'd leave behind, this story is for you. She tossed the empty envelope to the floor and started the engine, the truck coughing to life with a reluctant groan. The drive up from Casper took Evelyn the better part of the afternoon. Bleak brown fields swept under a pewter sky, snow lingering like salt on the edges of barbed wire. Wheat stubble flashed alongside, golden and cold. Her grip on the wheel tightened, knuckles white against fading leather, her left arm doing double time, the right still secured in its sling. Every mile north she counted out the years, the decades that had thinned her brother from memory. Michael, where was he now? The one who used to chase her around the hayloft, making up wild stories about secret tunnels and outlaw grandfathers. The same brother who hadn't written once after her sentencing, not a birthday, not a word. The truck bumped along washed-out county roads. Every jolt rattled Evelyn's shoulder, hot pain blooming at the joint. She muttered curses at the corrugations, scanning the horizon for that old barn. There, at last, gray timber sagging, doors like a crooked smile, and behind it the haunted hunch of the Rockies. Her first steps sunk into marshy mud, the skies spat cold drizzle against her cheeks. She approached the barn, the old key pressed between her thumb and palm. Roosters called in the distance, rough and far. Every step drew her into the past. A flash, Pop's workbench in the corner, mercury glass reflecting his bent wire-framed glasses. You can't ever tell, Evie, but some things under the dirt are worth more than what's on it. He'd laugh, cough, then scribble on notepads late into the night. Now his barn was hers, at least until auction. The padlock slipped open with a click. Evelyn took a bracing breath and heaved the door aside, splinters snagging her sleeve. Inside, cold shadows pressed in tight. She scanned for valuables, but all she saw was damp straw, rusted pulleys, and dust-blanketed boxes, hopeless and familiar. Wood groaned above as her foot brushed something strange. A rectangle of clean sawdust in a sea of filth, a track marks where boards had shifted recently. Her knees creaked as she lowered herself, good arm reaching for the edge of a loose plank. She pried it up, heart pounding. Underneath blackness, cold air swirled up, a hidden trapdoor. Suddenly, the mockery of the inheritance twisted in her stomach into suspicion. She hesitated, then peered into the dark. It smelled of earth and secrets. Afternoon light barely filtered through the barn's gaps as Evelyn examined the trapdoor. The edges of the boards were newer, less warped than the rest. Someone had maintained these recently. She pressed down with her shoe first, wary of collapse. When nothing shifted, she braced herself and with her left hand pulled the trapdoor aside. Below, a narrow wooden staircase plunged into shadow. Her pulse skipped. Beneath the barn, the farm was old, but nobody had ever mentioned a cellar. Not even in court when her family's dirty laundry had been aired. Wind rattled a window pane. She sniffed, was that whiff of ozone copper. Her palm closed on the head of a flashlight she'd pocketed from the truck. She switched it on, the beam slicing through cobwebs. The stairs creaked, each tread a protest. She stepped slow, toe first. The air down here was sharp and clinical, so unlike the barn above. Evelyn counted 7 steps to the bottom. Her boots thumped down onto packed earth. She swept her light in an arc. Rows of metal cabinets gleamed against concrete walls. Vats and broken beakers, half-dismantled machines, clipped extension cords fanned out across tool-strewn benches. On the far wall, a crumbling map of the Rockies, lines and color-coded dots scribbled in trembling hands. In a corner, a battered brown satchel. Something bulged from beneath a moth-eaten blanket. She nudged it aside with her boot, revealing folders bound with twine. A journal stuck out, her grandfather's looping scrawl evident even in the gloom. She unbound the folder, fingers shaking. The first page, blueprints, technical diagrams, notes labeled confidential, field applications do not share. Her grandfather's signature, bold and underlined. The same hand that had signed away the family's only real property. She blinked, confusion and a hot coil of old anger pounding in her chest. Why was this secret kept underneath the barn, not inside a safe or passed along in trust? Evelyn ran her hand across the diagrams, half familiar from the stories Pop used to tell when she was just a girl. Something in her gut told her she'd stumbled not on junk, but on the first fragment of a riddle that might yet save her. But the air shifted around her, too clean for a barn, the tang of chemical solvents barely dulled by time. She followed a plastic-wrapped hose across the floor, her light catching on what must have been a crude ventilation pipe. The place was a lab, no more, a hidden laboratory built right under the barn. In that moment, Evelyn understood. Whatever her grandfather died to protect, it couldn't fit in a safety deposit box. Someone, maybe everyone, wanted it buried. She heard a scuffle above. Boards moaned and she stiffened, heart racing. But when she listened, the barn above went silent once more. Her hand closed tight on the folder. She hauled herself back up the stairs, back muscles screaming. The first move in an old shadow game had begun. Night thickened as Evelyn loaded her truck, the boxes from the barn's secret belly wedged behind the seat. Wind scraped across the fields. She scanned each distant movement, nerves jangling. Her shoulder ached, reminding her of last November's accident. Her brother had never visited after, not even once. She parked at the old diner on Route 21, called the only ally left with enough know-how. Dr. Prentice, her grandfather's friend and a retired chemist hiding under a mountain of unpaid bills. Prentice shuffled in, his wild beard bristling. "You look like hell, Ev," he said, sliding into the booth. She smirked, "Better than dead, I need help." He studied the manila folder. "This is Pop's script." Not just that, there's blueprints, research data, military stuff. His eyes widened. Where did you? Under the barn, she interrupted, voice low. There's more down there, blueprints marked as classified. Prentice's hand found her arm. You can't let this go public, not yet. Evelyn gritted her teeth. In 48 hours, the sheriff's selling everything. Some ghost from the family, Michael I think, is suing for half. The bank's baying. He tapped the diagrams, lips pressed thin. This was in a patent war 10 years back. Lockheed Martin, Northrop, Dudee, these formulas are worth more than the farm. Her left hand clenched, so someone stole his research. Prentice gave a slow, heavy nod. Your family got robbed right under your nose. His words echoed, the weight of nameless years pressing down. She slid the blueprints across the table. Help me translate them. I need something ironclad before the auction. He shook his head, glancing around nervously. Careful, Ev, you don't know who you're up against. She met his gaze, a dare rising between them. Then we start at sunrise, no one stealing his work again. She left the diner, a strange resolve bubbling up. That night she didn't sleep. The next morning, Evelyn returned to Oak Haven Farm, Prentice's warnings ringing in her ear. Her head throbbed from a night wrestling blueprints and nightmares. In the barn, she pawed through a locked drawer from Pop's desk. A brittle envelope yielded a long-forgotten family photo, her, Michael, and their mother in matching flannel, mugging for the camera in front of a tractor. Scrawled on the back, for the ones who see below the dirt. She blinked, throat tight. Why had everyone, especially Michael, let her rot? Her fingers brushed the edge of a spiral notebook, thin and battered. Inside, Pop's writing. August 9, 1982. Michael, if you find this, you know who you are. No matter what, you must keep the circuit away from men who would use it for war. If Evelyn's reading, you must help her finish what I started. Don't trust the man with the smile. She read those lines twice. Don't trust the man with the smile. Below, a stamped receipt, winter of 1997, barely a month before her arrest. The name scribbled in, M.J. Adair. Her brother's signature. A sick chill rolled through her. Michael was alive somewhere and had known about the lab. She thought of his sudden vanishing act, the silence when her trial went public. The corners of her vision prickled. The pieces were snapping together with a force more dangerous than she'd ever guessed. There were secrets deeper than her prison sentence, and they were all festering under this barn. By evening, she translated a chunk of the research, documenting every page with her phone. She locked it all in the glove box, keys safety pinned to her battered vest. Her next move was clear. Make sure Michael couldn't take what their grandfather intended for her, not the contractors, not the war machine. The clock was ticking. Evelyn's boots crunched over frosted grass as she made her way to the county clerk's office the next morning. Prentice trailed behind, clutching a battered briefcase. Inside, the air crackled, locals huddled in chairs, glancing sidelong at the woman in the sling. From the desk, the sheriff raised a brow. You're here about Oak Haven, he said. Evelyn nodded. I have proof I'm the heir here. She opened the folder, sliding forward the notarized letter and a transcript of her grandfather's patent application, copied from the lab. The property isn't worthless. There's a hidden research facility underneath the barn. This was his life's work. A silence thick enough to stir dust followed. The sheriff's lips worked in disbelief. Military-grade circuits. Prentice interjected, voice brittle. Designed by Adair, unauthorized use. Lockheed Dudee, they owe her. Evelyn, your brother's already contacted us. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. He has documentation saying he's a joint heir. Her stomach tumbled. Prentice stiffened. That's not possible. Where's Michael now? Across the street, the clerk whispered wide-eyed. Evelyn's mouth went dry. The game was tightening, 40 hours left before the auction. She passed Prentice a shaky glance. He spoke low. If we can prove lineage and fraud, you can stall the auction. Otherwise, he gets the property at a steal. Evelyn swallowed. Then we show everything now. They crossed the street to the attorney's office, Evelyn's heart pounding against her busted ribs. Inside, Michael stood tall behind a glossy oak table, hair cut sharp, suit too new. His eyes flicked over her with coiled amusement. "Evelyn," he said, voice aged but smooth as glass, "surprised you showed." "Michael," she managed, jaw locked, "you've got some nerve coming back after all this time." He shrugged. "Someone has to keep the family's name respectable." "Respectable by stealing Pop's work, by hiding for 20 years. Michael's jaw ticked. "I'm here to claim what's mine, fair and square." Prentice slammed the folder down. "You know what's under the barn, Michael. This isn't just a land grab, it's about covering up a crime." Michael's smile faltered. "You have no idea what's at stake." "The whole country is at stake," Prentice hissed, knuckles pale. A heavy minute hung in the musty air. The game was on. Dark fell quickly as Evelyn limped along the edge of the fields back toward the barn, mist weaving through the low hollows and obscuring her path. Her thoughts spun. If Michael had returned, wielding forged documents and old family guilt, he could buy Oak Haven from under her just when she needed it most. She considered burning the blueprints, wiping the lab clean. But that would do nothing. Michael wasn't acting alone. Someone, likely with defense ties, was backing him. A twig snapped ahead. Evelyn tensed, reaching for the flashlight. Michael's form edged out from the shadows, blocking the barn's side door. "You couldn't just leave," he called, voice oily. "You never cared about any of this," she returned, keeping her distance. His teeth flashed, smile rigid as a fence post. "I care about what's left of our name." She narrowed her eyes. "Nobody buys that line. You want the money, the patents. You think you can scare me right to the auction, then disappear again." He stepped forward, menace in his tone. "If I have to." She jerked back, heart slamming. He smirked. "Besides, you're broken, remember. What can you do with half an arm and a police record?" Evelyn's good hand curled into a fist. "You'd be amazed." He laughed, cold air billowing around his words. "You always thought the truth would save you. It never has. Why start now?" She smirked, inching along the barn wall. "Time s up, Michael. The sheriff's already looking into those signatures of yours." He paled. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would," she said, her voice steel. "And I'll keep digging until every secret comes up." His face contorted. He lunged past her, desperate. But Evelyn spun off balance, letting her weight pull her sideways into the mud. Michael's grip slid off her jacket and he cursed, skidding toward the barn's edge. They faced each other, soaked, breathless, enmity laid bare. She spat dirt, victorious for a beat, but Michael barked, "You don't know who you're dealing with. You're not the only one after Pop's work." And with a final shove, Michael disappeared into the dusk. Evelyn's lungs burned, but a new fire kindled in her gut. He'd make his play. She'd be ready. By the following dawn, Evelyn had made copies of every document, photo, and notebook and driven to the home of the only person who might believe her, Margaret Staley, a retired claims investigator who owed her grandfather favors. Margaret eyed the evidence, arms folded. "You're not dragging me into court war, Ev," she said gruffly. Evelyn smirked. "Not if you help file an injunction. I need you to confirm lineage and backdate Michael's disappearance after my sentencing." He forged his way back. Margaret thumbed through the birth certificates. He was out of state for 20 years, record stop after 99, that's odd. The circuit diagrams caught Margaret's eye. She whistled, "This." Prentice interrupted, "Pop's invention. Patented then stolen, needs to go public." Margaret shook her head. "You go loud with this, you'll have military on your back. Quiet, you can tie up Michael in civil hell for years. Auction in 20 hours, Evelyn." Evelyn's breath shook. What would Pop have done? Margaret's hard eyes softened. He'd have kept what mattered out of greedy hands, but he'd never let Michael torch your name to save his own. We stand together tonight. Evelyn felt the fatigue press in. This was her last shot. She spent 6 hours with Margaret, calling outlying counties, digging up records, prepping a file to slam on the clerk's desk at dawn. Revenge was tempting, but justice meant more than just winning. The moon crawled over the horizon as Evelyn limped back to the farm, that old key biting her palm. Auction day arrived, brutal and bright, wind slicing off the Rockies. Evelyn's boots crunched over the courthouse steps. Inside, people clustered near the posted notices. Whispers rippled as she entered, a homegrown felon come back to claim blood and bones. In the corner, Michael waited, collar rigid. His eyes darted the room, face set in a mask. The county clerk, glasses trembling on his nose, called the proceeding to order. "We are here for the disposition of Oak Haven Farm, 60 acres and improvements. 2 claimants, Evelyn Adair and Michael Adair." Evelyn glanced past the clerk into the crowd. Margaret and Prentice stood, silent sentinels. She breathed out, steady. Michael spoke first, voice ringing. "I have family documentation, original will and proof of my return as of last week. I am requesting half the proceeds and assets." The sheriff's eyes slid between them. "Miss Adair, do you contest?" Evelyn stepped forward, raising her left hand. "Yes, sir, I do. The will is clear. I am the listed heir. More importantly, I have proof that Michael's claim is forged. He's been out of state for almost 20 years, only resurfacing for this sale. His signatures are backdated." An uncomfortable rumble spread among the crowd. Michael smirked, but his hand trembled slightly above his paperwork. "You gonna tell them about your time in prison, Ev?" he taunted. She met his gaze, steady. "They already know. I paid for my mistakes. You're the one hiding." She turned to the sheriff. "And there's another reason the property matters. There's a hidden lab underneath the barn with evidence that the Adair family's research, including military technology, was stolen by the same corporations Michael is now in contact with." Michael scoffed loudly. "Conspiracy theories." Margaret cut him off. "We have a living witness," she announced, voice projecting through the hush. Prentice, for the first time, stepped forward, offering sworn affidavit and a packet of documents. The room bristled. Evelyn's heart pounded as Michael stepped close, eyes wild, dropping his polished demeanor. He hissed, "Don't you dare take one more step." She stared him down, hands shaking. "You think you can scare me with that?" He laughed, too loud now. "All these years you kept quiet, why start screaming now? All these years, all the pain, I kept your secrets, but today they're done rotting. I only want what's owed," he snarled, baring teeth. She spat, "You're not family, you don't belong under this roof." Steel-rimmed anger flared in his eyes. He lurched. She sidestepped, her good arm swinging between them, slamming the desk as the sheriff stepped in. "You're done lying, every rotten secret's coming out," she thundered, voice cracking. Michael's reply came, low and frayed, "That's your mistake." She leaned forward, voice icy. "If you ever cared about him, you'll stop." People edged closer, the drama knotted tight. The sheriff raised a hand. "Enough. Claims are frozen pending investigation. If evidence matches, Oak Haven Farm stays with Evelyn. As for the lab, state and federal will want to look. And Michael, until this is sorted, you're persona non grata in Newton County." The floor seemed to drop out from under Michael. He staggered back, color drained, as members of the crowd inched away from him. Margaret delivered copies of the evidence to the sheriff. Prentice whispered urgently to Evelyn, "We did it. You broke the cycle." Michael tried once more, desperately, "She's a felon, I'm all that's left. Blood matters." A low voice from the crowd interrupted, "Not when you spill it for profit." Whispers built, people left Michael's side. Evelyn watched as he stood, alone, shunned by his own town, the man who sold out his blood for a piece of the past. The outcome was final. By sundown, news had spread through Oak Haven. No one would sell to Michael. No one would so much as let him buy groceries. His defense industry contacts couldn't reach him now. Reputations in a rural town are earned and lost at the speed of a whisper. Prentice helped file federal notice on the Adair Circuit in Washington. Margaret called in favors, tying up the loose ends to keep the technology out of the wrong hands. Evelyn remained, watching snow drift down on 60 acres of useless dirt, the barn its secrets and at last peace. She wasn't rich, but she was free. Months passed. The sheriff's sale was called off, Evelyn's ownership reaffirmed by the court. The real beneficiaries of the Adair Circuit were veterans and researchers far from Newton County. For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn walked into the Oak Haven diner and ordered coffee without fear. Michael's name went unspoken, unemployed, ostracized, a ghost among living. Evelyn never tried to rebuild her old life. She didn't need to. She rented spare space in the barn to a local youth group, started growing wildflowers in the fields that once broke her grandfather's back. Relationships grew, slow and honest. The scars on her arm faded. Some kinds of freedom are quiet. When the lies rot in sunlight, roots find new ground. If you've ever lost everything and stood on empty dirt, then built your own worth from secrets no one else could see, remember this. The only story that matters is the one you tell when no one's watching. If you know someone facing the unthinkable alone, let them hear this. Sometimes the seeds that sprout are the ones left buried the longest. The winter melt brought new sounds to Oak Haven. The tapping of hammers as old windows were patched, laughter from the youth group tending a scrap of vegetable garden near the barn, the rude noises of Prentice's rusty sedan when it braved the washboard road at dawn. Evelyn kept mostly to herself, shoulders still stiff, but there was a new patience in her stride. She found herself pausing under the eaves sometimes, watching little knots of kids chase each other around the old tractor, amazed at the simple, sharp ache of belonging. One cool morning, Margaret showed up at the porch, arms full of legal folders, stamping mud off her boots. She offered Evelyn a thin smile. "It's done. Washington confirmed your name S on the patent now. The Adair Circuit's off the sale block, Federal Archive only. You're safe." Evelyn blinked. She sat, shoulders folded, mug braced tight in her left hand. Safe, that's a word I haven't trusted in years. Margaret's smile twisted wry. "Don't waste it, Ev. Folks talk, some still don't like you, but they respect you now. That'll count more come spring." Evelyn breathed in heavy. "You think Michael'll try again?" Margaret hesitated, gaze sliding over the thawing fields. "He's burned. Nobody'll back him now. He'll either leave for good or gnaw on the past till there's nothing left." She set the folders down and stood. "Don't let yourself freeze, too. There's more here than what's buried." She left Evelyn with words warming her chest long after the screen door creaked shut. That afternoon, Evelyn found herself in the barn's shadow, kids tumbling over each other in the hay. One scrawny boy with an impressive red scrape on his chin drifted over, eyeing her warily. "Miss Adair," he mumbled, twisting a string around his fingers. "That old trapdoor, does it really lead to a lab?" Evelyn almost laughed, the edges of her scars tightening. "Used to, best not to poke around where you don't know the ground," she softened. "You and your friends need anything, you come get me, all right." The boy's eyes widened, cautious hope flickering there. "You done fighting bad guys now?" She looked past him, memories sluicing through the fresh-turned earth where wildflowers had begun to breach. The secrets, the lies, her own fear, she'd fought them all and beaten them for now. "For the moment," she said gently. "Sometimes fighting's just making sure things grow where they wouldn't before." He grinned, then darted away, pelting back to his companions with a boldness she envied. Dusk drew long blue dust over the land. Prentice appeared with chili in a plastic container and a sheaf of old photos Evelyn assumed he intended to embarrass her with. They set to eating at the battered picnic bench by the barn, elbows bumping companionably. Prentice chewed, considering, "You ever think you'd make it back here?" She shook her head. "Not a day in prison when I believed I'd see sky like this again." Her gaze drifted to the horizon. "You got friends for life, old man. Don't let your debts tell you otherwise." He bumped her good shoulder lightly. "Just mind who you trust, Ev. You know how stories get twisted." "I do," she said, face settling into a soft smile. "But I'm learning the difference now between secrets worth keeping and those you finally give up to the sun." Quiet spread, the sort of peace Evelyn had thought impossible. The ground didn't tremble beneath her anymore. She was tethered here not by blood, but by memory, by stubbornness, by the small community slowly letting her back in. Letters arrived, months on. A thank you from the Department of Veterans Affairs for contributions to non-weaponized tech. A short handwritten note from one of Pop's old friends at Los Alamos. Congratulations, pride, a sense of doors closing with dignity at last. Sometimes the news brought word of Michael, drifting north, blaming everyone but himself, but his vitriol fell harmless now. Evelyn kept up the land, let the fields return wild, built a proper fence. At the first spring rummage sale, Margaret handed her a battered horseshoe and grunted, "Luck's got to be earned." Evelyn nailed it sideways above the barn door, laughing for the first time in years. Not everything had to mean more than it was. One May evening, after a long day replacing broken window panes, Evelyn climbed to the ridge at the back of the property. Gold spilled across the mountains, glaciers shining in the west. She dug her boots into the cold dirt and let herself mourn what was lost, then quietly, fiercely forgave herself. Prentice found her there after sunset, out of breath. "It's all handled," he said softly, holding out a flask. "Want to toast Pop, maybe even ourselves?" She accepted, raising it toward the fields. "To Pop, who saw the gold under the dirt, and to you, Doc, who helped dig it up." He clinked the flask against hers. "To you, kid, for holding on." There was silence between them, easy and real. The pain in her shoulder had finally dulled. The sharp need for explanation had faded. She had kept her promise to her grandfather, to herself. She deplanted something that would last. The moon slid over Oak Haven, silvering wildflower shoots and fence posts alike, softening the barn that had stored more secrets than grain. Evelyn breathed in Wyoming night, fear swapped out for hope. She watched her land, broken, battered, and still beautiful, and knew she'd earned every rough acre. If anyone asked how the story ended, she'd only say, "Honestly, that's enough." Summer baked the fields in honeyed light before the year truly turned. Evelyn settled into her new rhythm, greeting the mailman by name, waving at pickup trucks cresting the lane, learning how to accept both suspicion and simple kindness in the market. It was never easy, but it was hers. One blistering afternoon, Margaret dropped by swinging a bag of seeds. "Here," she grunted, thrusting it into Evelyn's hands. "Wild sunflowers, helps loosen tough dirt." Evelyn grinned, "Trying to teach me patience." "Something like that." Margaret's smile flickered in the heat. "Oak Haven was never just a Dare property, now it's yours, make it count." The word stayed in Evelyn's mind through days of weeds and mending fence lines. In the old barn, she cleared the last of her grandfather's broken tools and found, tucked behind a post, a photograph long thought lost, Pop beaming, scribbling notes as a little girl with storm-tangled hair peeked from behind a drafting table. The memory ached and healed at the same time. One evening in July, Evelyn leaned over the porch rail as the youth group trundled off down the road, shouting their goodbyes. Prentice wheeled up in his creaking sedan, a lopsided cake balanced on the dashboard. "Anniversary," he declared, eyebrows wagging. "1 year at Oak Haven, that's cause for celebration." Evelyn barked a startled laugh, accepting the cake. "Didn't think I'd survive a year, let alone celebrate." "You did more than survive," Margaret added, appearing from the kitchen with mugs in hand. "You changed this place just by staying." They ate in the deepening dusk, conversation rolling into silence and back again. Finally, when fireflies drifted over the wheat stubble, Evelyn looked at her friends, gratitude catching in her chest. "I was buried when I got here," she said softly. "Didn't think anything could take root. Turns out it was just waiting for someone stubborn enough to dig." She smiled, tearing another hunk of cake. "Thank you for helping me remember I could." Prentice reached over, squeezing her hand. Margot's nod was all the answer she needed. The night settled dark and whole around her, full of quiet promise. And as heat lightning flickered over the ridge, Evelyn realized that Oak Haven, scarred, storied, hers, had finally become a place you didn't have to run from. It was, after everything, home.